Welcome everyone to another episode of Think With Me. Not on Thursday this week. I have a conflict tomorrow, so we're doing this a day early, but welcome to another episode of Think With Me. I'm Justin with Effective. We have an interesting stream planned for today. First off, I've got a question or a tweet actually that popped up from Danny Hatcher today, which sparked an interesting thought conversation about PKM and semantics. We'll get into that first out of the gate. After we do that, though, we've got a couple of questions from you. One about how do I stop switching productivity tools and systems? And the next one is if I use productivity or Obsidian for productivity. We'll spend some time digging deep into those. And if you have any questions yourself that you would like to get answered on this show at some point in time, there is a link to a form in the description. Feel free to fill that out. Lastly, we're going to continue the conversation from last week. We're going to continue the conversation from last week about building and iterating on my productivity system. So we'll do more of that on the live stream today. Carolyn, welcome to the stream. Yes, it's not Thursday today, but what do you do? I think it's kind of funny. But welcome, glad to have you on the stream here today. We're going to dive in first to this tweet from Danny Hatcher. I'm going to pull it up on my screen here today. Danny has been posting some awesome questions and positing some great thoughts over on his Twitter account. He's also got a YouTube channel. I definitely recommend checking him out, Danny Hatcher. He does a lot around Obsidian and PKM, as well as really taking a heavy slant on education and learning, it seems like at this point. So definitely, if you're interested in those topics, recommend checking out his channel. I'm going to zoom in here real quick so we can see this a little bit more clearly. His tweet basically says, note-taking is the act or process of taking notes. This means that we can take notes on our own notes. What's called note-making, I see as note-taking our own notes, thoughts. And this just got me thinking about this thing that's happening in the personal knowledge management space these days. And it is so heavily focused on semantics. What do we call this? And so I wrote this response. I said, to me, getting so caught up in semantics as the PKM space has been lately makes note-taking, note-making, building a second brain, Zettelkasten, tools for thought, whatever is now, much more unapproachable. Foundationally, it's all learning, thinking, and creating. I think there's a lot of value to be had in this personal knowledge management space, the note-taking space. I really think the crux of a good creative process is note-taking. Part of the reason for that is that everything is a remix. If you ever saw those video series, look them up. They're really interesting. But there's a video series a number of years ago that came out called Everything is a Remix, and it dives into literally how almost nothing is new. It's all just a remix of other people's ideas or a representation of it. The one example that stands out to me is Star Wars. I mean, we all know Star Wars, but the very first Star Wars movie, A New Hope, was based on an older story and even used similar shots and framings from a movie that came out probably 20 years prior or something to that sort. I'll have to look up the specific details on that. But the point is that almost everything is a remix of something else. It's other ideas connected together in different ways and represented. And so note-taking to me is the process of learning, finding an interesting concept that you want to dig into, learning as much as you can about it, taking notes on it, pulling out the most interesting tidbits and the most useful tidbits, thinking on that, stewing on it, building connections inside of your head, because it's not just your software, your note-taking software, where those connections are made. The note-taking software is really an extension of the canvas of your brain. And as a result of that, that extension The connections don't happen in the note-taking software. They're just a place where you're thinking externally. And so with that, the connections are happening in your head, despite the fact that you're using a note-taking software. And then from that point, when you're making these connections over time, you're building up new thoughts and new ideas, and you're eventually creating out of it. And so I think because there's so much value in this, and I think there's a high value to undertaking some of these practices for the majority of knowledge workers and people who work where they're really creating something out of other ideas and other pieces of information. It can be a content creator on YouTube. It can also be someone who's working a desk job and putting together reports for a living. But really, it's all creation at some degree. You're taking other ideas, you're digging in, you're learning, you're thinking, and you're making things from it. Creating a report might not feel like being creative, but it definitely is. It's just a different capacity of being creative. And so all of this, like, futzing about with, is it note-taking? Is it note-making? Is it building a second brain? Is it Zettelkasten? Is it all these different frameworks and ideas in the PKM space really seems like it's getting lost. We're getting too far into the weeds, when in reality, if we can start selling the idea, and I don't mean selling as far as like packaging up information and putting a price on it, but really marketing ourselves as something where am I going with this in my head? If we can package these ideas up in a way that's digestible to most people, I think there's a lot of value to be had for a lot of folks, instead of getting so caught up into semantics. Like I mentioned here, it becomes so unapproachable when there's 80 people debating on if the space should be called something about second brains or integrated thinking environments or tools for thought, note-taking applications. It just gets really crazy, I think. And I think we got to be mindful of that too, because we are a little niche corner of the web. And I think probably Tiago Forte's book, Building a Second Brain, that just launched, will gain a little bit of notice from the broader public to the PKM space. But I just think that when you get into the weeds of a lot of it, unfortunately, a lot of the unclarity that we have around the core concepts and we're getting too caught up in the details is making things a little bit challenging. Carolyn, Bad X Enterprises, synthesis versus creation semantics are something I've been thinking about lately a ton. Yeah, let me know what you're thinking a little bit more about that. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that, Carolyn. But just to kind of give a high level thought for me, kind of what I'm grabbing from that. Yeah, synthesis is just the idea of pulling ideas together, and then creation, to me, is just the act of doing something with it. Again, nothing is new in a lot of ways. It's a matter of pulling ideas together and talking about them differently, sharing them differently. Plus, it's also mixing in your experience too. A lot of times we'll learn a core concept and then we'll contextualize it within our life experience, the other things that we know. And as a result, the way that we create or make something with that idea is actually really unique and interesting because we've applied our own human uniqueness as an individual person onto that idea. Now, that idea may not be completely original, but the way that we've presented it or the way that we've contextualized it is unique because nobody has the same exact life experience as, say, you do. That's why in the creator world, it's easy for so many different people to be talking about, for example, productivity practices, because every person's different. They have a different way to approach things. They have some of the same core concepts and foundations. But the idea there is each person kind of approaches things differently. And so I can talk about productivity practices in my own way and from my own context and perspective, and someone else can talk about them completely differently. Like, I know if I sat down and had a conversation with Tiago Forte about a lot of this stuff, we would probably agree on 80% of it, but there's probably 20% of it or so that we would have different views on. And that's okay. That's kind of what makes things interesting. And in a lot of regards, as people forget that it's not, we don't all have the answers. We can learn from each other in the process too. Anyway, I'm kind of going on a tangent. Carolyn is saying, one of the communities I am building focuses on creatives. The concept of synthesis can be received negatively when it comes to the creative arts. I'm with you. I believe creativity is synthesis. Yeah, I heard someone say one time that probably 90% of creativity is synthesis, and the other 10% is actually innovation. And many times innovation is iteration, where you're taking an existing idea and you're making it better. You're adding something to it, or you're taking and then synthesis is taking 2 or 3 different ideas and combining them together. I really recommend anybody who's interested in diving into this topic reading the book Range by David Epstein. It's a book about being a generalist and why specializing later in life isn't a bad thing, but he hits on some core concepts that I think are really valuable in relation to creativity and personal knowledge management. Number one of which being is that if you can draw from a variety of different areas of expertise, then you might be able to see patterns from one area and apply it to a completely different, unrelated area, but solve problems with it. He uses a few different examples, and I'm having a hard time recalling them at the moment, but I definitely recommend checking that specific book out. There's a lot of great ideas, especially in regards to creativity there. Anyway, let me know what you're thinking about that. I would love to hear from you in the comments on this, in the chat, what you're thinking about the PKM space right now. If we're getting a little too rambunctious with our naming, trying to get all the naming sorted out with things, we're getting too caught up in semantics. Next, I want to move on to a question. A user or a listener, viewer, stream member, I guess I don't know the right word to call it today, but GED is the name. How do I stop switching tools and systems? This is a perennial problem that many of us who like productivity systems run into. I have personally run into this issue over the course of years, and I have a few things that I have sorted through that might be of assistance to you, GED, and others who are facing this problem. The first point I want to draw attention to in this context is that first, it's really important to recognize that no tool or system will ever be perfect. Productivity is often promised us a way to externalize our brain. David Allen, with Getting Things Done, has this concept of mind like water, where you just get everything out into your trusted getting things done system, and then your brain is able to focus on processing instead of holding on to information. I think there is some value in that. I mean, there is the concept of the Zeigarnik effect, which is this idea that your brain holds on to open loops, things that are incomplete, more readily than they do closed loops. Things that are completed. So, for example, how can a waitress who's working at a restaurant or a waiter remember your order without writing it down? That's the Zeigarnik effect. It's an open order to them. They remember it. It's right in the front of their working memory, and they can come back to it really readily. But once that order is placed, they let it go and they don't remember it anymore. But often productivity tools cannot serve that need for us. As I mentioned earlier in the stream, Tools like note-taking apps and task managers, they're really just external canvases, extensions of our brain, if you will. Our brain kind of uses them as a visual way to work with information. That's not a bad thing, but it's a slight adjustment of our expectations when it comes to productivity tools. If we just think that a task manager is going to be the nagging mother and we've delegated all the decision making authority to it to say, hey, you need to be doing this at this time, I think there's a bit of a challenge with that. And that kind of leads me into the second point I want to draw attention to in this is that no tool is the center of your productivity system. You are. We've often talked about in the productivity world building your system around a set of tools. But in reality, you are the center of your system. When we try to build a system focused on tools, we often try to externalize the responsibility and decision making to that tool. And that was only going to lead you to frustration. And so if you are doing this, this might be leading into a reason why you want to switch tools. If that tool isn't showing you the right information at the right time, if it's not nagging you hard enough to get something done, or if you're trying to nag yourself too much with it, maybe you're finding yourself a little bit overwhelmed. Changing your mindset towards how you approach a productivity tool and remembering that the decision making and the responsibility of getting the work done still rests upon your shoulders, but the tool can be merely an extension of your brain to make sure that you keep track of all the things that you want to get done. I would also say that not switching tools is a matter of the will. You have to make a decision to stick with something. So the best way to do this is to commit up front that you're going to choose a tool and stick with it for at least 6 months or some kind of a system. Every single system has a burn-in time where your mind is going to adjust to using it. For example, I did an experiment a number of years ago where I was using Todoist instead of OmniFocus. I'd been using OmniFocus for a few years, but I was just finding it a little difficult to interact with because my primary job at the time was on a Windows machine and OmniFocus for web was not a thing at that point. So I wanted to try to use Todoist because I could access it cross-platform. I did this, and for the first 3 weeks of using Todoist, I was finding myself wanting to apply the methodologies and mindsets baked into OmniFocus and try to bend Todoist to use that form. Well, that didn't work so well. So instead, what I did is I just tried to get myself into a flow of using the tool and try to learn the strengths and weaknesses of the tool and then use them to my advantage. And this took probably 3 months for that to fully settle in. And so when you're switching tools back and forth, you don't really get the mindset shift that happens because you're popping into Todoist and then you're using Things 3. And then Tick looks really interesting to you. And then, oh, maybe you need some more power, so you'll pull out OmniFocus or Asana or something like that. And instead of committing to a single tool and adapting your workflow to that tool, you lose that capability to really meld your brain around the way a software works and getting into a flow with it. And so the thing you have to do in this context is assess the opportunity cost of switching. How much time, effort, and energy is it going to take you, or will you burn, while making a switch between tools? How much value is it going to give you in the long run? If you've calculated that out and you have a high cost of investment, but really not that much of a return, say you're already about 80% productive using Todoist, is OmniFocus really going to get you another 20% of the way? Probably not. And so the value may be low, and it often is when you're switching back and forth between tools. However, the converse of all of this is that it's okay to embrace change and iteration. How you track and accomplish work is going to change over time, and that's okay. Life changes, seasons change, where You might go from being in one role in a job to being promoted into a manager. The way that you do your work is going to change. I just did a video on this about how different productivity systems line up with different types of careers or different job types. And as a result of that, you're going to need to flex and shift how you structure your time and how you organize the things that you need to do over that process. But where the key value here is in iteration and experimentation, not making major changes, saying jumping from one software to another, but making small changes, identifying a core problem that you're running into, trying to clarify that as much as possible, and then experimenting with little changes to your system so that you can make improvements over the course of the long term. No jump from one tool to another is going to solve any of your productivity problems. Instead, it's the constant iteration, experimentation, and upkeep of your system that will keep you there. The other question that I had this week was from Joe. Joe was asking, do you use Obsidian for productivity? And the answer is kind of right now. And I'm going to make some changes to that in a little bit. Some of the main areas of productivity that I'm trying to flesh out are notes, thinking, and external thinking environment, daily and weekly planning, my long-term trajectory, short-term goals, or what I like to use, OKRs, and then the lists that I need to track so that I can stay on task, and the projects that I'm working with there. I kind of group those all under lists. What I'm using Obsidian for right now is tracking high and mid-level work. So this is yearly themes and OKRs, objectives and key results. These are the things that keep the big picture on track for me. I'm not really tracking tasks as much right now in Obsidian. I've tried this in the past, nor projects. I really like Todoist better for this because it's just built for it. You can put a task management system inside of Obsidian, but it's a little bit more involved to build it. But I am exploring doing a bit more planning inside of Todoist, or not Todoist, but OmniFoc. Wow, I am blurting out all the wrong names today. I'm trying to experiment with doing some daily planning inside of Obsidian. The daily notes seem to work really well for that. I am going to actually try to bring that up on stream here real quick. So if you just bear with me a moment. Got to size my window appropriate here so it shows up on stream correctly. If you've been experimenting with using Obsidian for any of this, tasks or goal management or anything like that, do let me know. I would love to hear from you in the chat or in the comments how you're using things inside of Obsidian, what you're finding effective, because I think there's some really interesting approaches to it. All right, I'm going to get Obsidian up on the screen quick. Let me know. Let me see here. All right, here we go. Shift our thinking here. Okay. This is an idea that I started working on a couple days ago, actually, was actually creating a templated vault for Obsidian life management. I'm kind of debating on names for it. I've been liking the concept of, or just the way it feels of using something like Effective OS for it. I don't know if you think that's a dumb name or great name, let me know. I'd love to hear from you about that one. But it's kind of this, what I'm building out is really the VST approach concept that I have been working on, where you've got this high level vision, your yearly theme, the trajectory that you want to go on with your life, guiding principles for that. And then you have the strategic level, which what I see are your goals, your objectives, OKRs that I'm using. And then below that is tactics. where this is where you get into the day planning, the energy management, time management, also task and project management as well. That tends to happen at that level. And trying to just figure out a way to put all of this together in an Obsidian vault to where it makes sense, that it's easy to use. You can just pick it up and get going with it. To give you a little bit of clarity of how I'm using Obsidian for some of this, for one, I use my Obsidian vault to track my yearly themes. I do an annual review inside of my vault. I have a template for it. You can actually get that template for free at annualreviewtemplate.com, I believe. Yeah, I'll just pop the link. It's thinkeffective.co/annual. If you're interested in checking that out, you can sign up for free at thinkeffective.co and get access to this, plus all the other guides and resources that we have as part of our free membership there. But basically, I do an annual review every December. And the reason I do this is I want to get a sense of what is working and not working in my life. I'll pull up the annual review template here. We can take a look at it. Should be under my templates folder. Annual review template. I did a whole video that's linked on that page where you can see kind of how to go through this. But every year I do a budget audit for both my business and personal finances. I run through the wheel of life exercise, and this is really one of the keystone habits. Anytime that I'm going through a season change or an annual review, where I do an assessment, I try to see what are my areas that are performing well and why, and what are areas that need some attention. And then I'm digging into a retrospective. What did I accomplish? What went well? What could have gone better? What should I start, stop, and keep doing? Then I define my yearly theme. Now, again, a yearly theme, if you're not familiar with that concept, is really a guiding principle. My theme for 2022 is the year of rebuilding. I really was assessing the idea over the last year and just realizing, things seem to be shifting and going a different direction for me this year. I would really like to focus my time on rebuilding some of the things that throughout the last couple of years have maybe not been the strongest. My sense of community locally, right now, it's rebuilding a career path and a job track, building out effective a little bit more effectively, and going forward with that. In past years, I've used like themes like the year of stabilization, the year of slowing down, where I really intentioned myself to slow down and be intentional, thoughtful with the types of activities that I was undertaking at that time. And then the annual review ends out with what's possible. Usually doing some kind of a mind mapping activity where I'm brainstorming all of the possible areas and projects and ideas that I might want to try to focus on in the next year. I've talked about this before, but this is where the podcasts that I used to do, Process, came from. The YouTube channel right now, that's where this came from. And live streaming like this. This is where, in these brainstorming sessions on an annual basis, this is where I've really honed in my focus and found some things that I want to aim for. System review is just looking at all the concepts of the systems that I have in place, whether it be a productivity system, my backup system that I have, hard drives, computer systems, things of that sort, and trying to think, are there any improvements that I want to make in that? Business processes, things of that sort. So this is one of the keystone habits that I have in my year that helps to keep me on track. I build out annual review, or I build out a yearly theme from that point. And that theme is what spawns the objectives that I am pursuing. And so I'll pop open one of those real quick here. I have under this life management folder that I'm trying to build out and figure out, which we'll do maybe a little bit today. I have an OKRs folder. And you can see here that I have build community, financial stability, and systematize activities. These are my 3 objectives for the year. So for example, under systemize activities, I don't have this one fully fleshed out yet because I'm just taking this one on. But I have the objective, which is the outcome that I want to have, was to systematize the main activities of both work and life. And so I need to, I guess, quantify this a little bit more, or make it so that it's more measurable instead of let's see here, and more measurable, so where it's scoped more appropriately. I'll undo that. Systematize household management, content production, and productivity. That's a little bit more distinct and measurable, because there's a few things that I wanted to make sure that we're keeping track of in our house. I want to make sure that I have a content engine built for Effective here, where we're creating valuable stuff for you, and then we're distributing it and putting it out there in different ways, because not everybody can watch a video, but sometimes someone might watch a YouTube short, or they may read a community post. They might not catch the video right away. So systematizing that would be really helpful to me, because it allows me to stay focused on what I'm doing here, but also do a good job at getting it done. And then productivity in general, which is what we've been working on the stream the last couple of times. Then key results for this would be to commit to a set of tools for productivity, define and document areas of household management in a singular shared place. Content production is define and commit to a consistent schedule for content creation. Checklist the creation process in Notion. And then the other thing I want to do is intentionally distribute all effective content, past, present, and future. One thing that a lot of content creators do is they create stuff and then they never share it again. So I have a backlog of nearly 80 podcasts that I need to tap into a little bit more. And that's not just creating videos on YouTube and touching on the same concepts again, but maybe sharing those concepts in a community post. Sometimes it might be creating a video. Sometimes it might be mentioning those concepts on a live stream here. Other times it may be putting together like a newsletter, a blog post. So just using the ideas from a piece of content and then sharing them out more, because you can create a library of content on a consistent basis over time. But as a lot of content managers in the marketing world are finding, you can't consistently, it's really hard to sit down and make stellar content every week or every day and put it out there in the world and just come up with it out of the blue. Instead, you have to have a distribution strategy for it. And I think a lot of content creators could benefit from that as well, because many of us have great ideas and we've created awesome resources for people, but we put them out there and then we don't really talk about them again. We just kind of leave it to the algorithm or our social media following to pick up on it and then take to it and consume it. But when you have a video such as this live stream, you might be able to break down multiple YouTube shorts out of it, maybe some Twitter posts or tweet threads. You might even be able to get some YouTube community posts out of it. Being able to distribute the content and in a way that is meaningful to people, not just constantly trying to get people to click on stuff, but finding where maybe you guys are hanging out and sharing it there so you don't necessarily have to jump on every single hour-long live stream that we do, I think would be really helpful. So anyway, back to the broad concept here, OKRs. This is kind of what an OKR looks like in my mind. You have a measurable objective. Measurable doesn't necessarily mean that you have to put a number on it, but measurable means that the outcome is clearly defined. You can say, yes, I've hit this point. The key results are the activities or the milestones that will end up getting you to that point. Now, this is not a complete list here by any means, but the key results for this objective, I can definitely say, yes, I need to commit to a set of tools for productivity that might spawn another key result for me as I go down the road. I can also, looking at defining and documenting areas of household management in a singular shared place, that is really a project. And so I need to be able to group that in a place so that I can put that information together. Where am I going to do that? What types of areas are there? What kinds of information do I need documented? How am I going to share that with my wife in a way that it's accessible to her? I have to decide on those things. And so there's a layer here yet that I don't quite have figured out, and that's the interface between the objectives and the projects that go with them, or the initiatives that go with them out of these key results. The other thing that I'm experimenting with doing is having a daily document. This was an idea that I picked up from somebody on LinkedIn, and I thought it was awesome. And so here's kind of the broad picture of what it looks like. I have my weekly objectives laid out here. These are the things that I want to stay top of mind for this week. And then there's a stay clear, and there's a number of sections down here. I don't have this all filled out quite yet, but there's a section asking, are you feeling off today? And just some questions that I'm asking myself. Sleeping enough, drinking enough water? Do I have enough white space? Have I gotten exercise? Am I feeling negative emotions? If so, why? Many of these things are the reasons why I feel off in the day. And if I don't do them consistently, then I'm not in a good spot. However, if I'm making sure that I'm getting these things in my day, usually I'll get back on track. Just a reminder of what my values are. I don't have this one filled out yet, but I'm going to have an embedded note here that just is a quick bullet list of my personal values to remind me of what those are. The trajectory that I'm on, which is the yearly theme, the year of rebuilding. If I want to dig further into that and remind myself, I can click into that. My objectives that I have set that are currently active. This is a data view query that uses these fields up here to pull it in. I have this OKR active field, and this is literally just querying on that true field. So that way I can have a history of OKRs that I've completed, but and they're not always going to be just year bound. Sometimes they might come in halfway through the year. I might complete them in the year, and sometimes they might go longer than a year. So having that field and having this automatically populated and generated automatically is really kind of neat. Then current priorities. This is a section that I'm experimenting with right now, but I have a board created. Not what I wanted there. I have a board created where there are projects on a card. Let's see here. Priority board. That's what I want. I have this board created here where I have priorities. This is where I'm experimenting with the idea of project management inside of Obsidian. I've got a section here saying queued. So these are projects that are not active. And then I'm using a simple ABC priority method here. A meaning high priority, B meaning medium, C meaning low, and then done over here. I have a quick add macro created, not in this vault. Apparently that's not syncing over properly. I had it set up on my other machine. I'll have to get that configured, but a quick add snippet where I can literally just hit Command P and create these automatically and have it added to the right priority column for me. Go into here and then just experimenting with this, the area, the related objectives, desired outcome, relevant resources, and next actions. Just one place. Obviously, this is customizable. I don't have to do this on every single project. And I also don't need to have this exact setup for every project. It's more of a starting point for me to figure out if this makes sense to do. But yeah, that's kind of the broad picture of how I'm using Obsidian right now for goal and planning and things like that. I also have a daily note that I'm working on creating where I have habits, my daily habits. Like I want to make sure I review the daily document every single day, where I have a plan for the day. So I have my weekly objectives embedded from that daily document right inside the note. And then I'm using the Todoist Sync plugin to create some embedded Todoist filters right inside of the note. So I can show what my green zone activities are, yellow and red. So my high energy, my okay energy, and my low energy activities. And I have those filtered by labels. So in Todoist, I'm experimenting with the setup right now where I have maybe 6 or 7 labels is all. And they come in sets. So the first set is green, yellow, and red coincide with energy levels that I'm trying to track. And then I have next, waiting, and someday. So that's taking an idea from getting things done, a next actions list, a someday list, and a waiting list. Anything on the next list is ready to go. It's something that I am committed to doing, and I can do it at any time. And every task is going to have one of the status labels and one of the energy labels. Again, I'm just experimenting with this to see this working. And then I have a log section here too, to where I can just type out any notes that I'm thinking about for the day. Or if I'm capturing information, say I'm watching a YouTube video and I want to take notes on that, I can link it from my daily note. Again, all relatively experimental, but I'm interested in digging in a bit further with it. I'm going to pop back over to Miro. This is what we were working in last week. And I want to spend a little time fleshing out some high-level stuff on the stream here before we wrap up. So this is where we ended last week's productivity system stuff, our work. Some open questions that I have here, the things I need to define is what method I'm going to use, what am I using for PKM, where am I storing my vision, my objectives, my projects, tasks, where am I planning my day and my week, and then how am I defining habits, processes, and standard operating procedures to make that happen. And then some of the key principles that I'm trying to figure out is, do I keep it in a single system or do I use a multiple tool system? So a single system would be something built around Obsidian generally. Multiple tools would be using Obsidian and Todoist and others. Other things that I want to achieve with it are clarity. Make sure that the information has high integrity inside of that system, making it easy to review and also define. Where it's flexible to where I can try different approaches within that system, but not have to change out all of the tooling. And then also a focus on energy management. As I mentioned last week, the green, yellow, and red zones, which is a concept I grabbed from Carrie Newhoff. Then some major aspects of it where I need to make sure that I am tracking some major features of it. I need to have a way to capture. That is critical. That is one of the major habits from getting things done that I have retained is you just got to capture stuff and then you can deal with it later. Having regular system reviews, both at a weekly basis to make sure everything is out of my head and in the system where it belongs, that it's all up to date. But then also on a either monthly or quarterly basis to check in with myself and check in on those objectives that I'm pursuing. And then on the annual basis, which we touched on already. Mentioning the annual review, objective setting and review, that's generally with that monthly or quarterly review, but that's something that needs to be as part of it. And then also planning. This is one of the things that has been lacking in my system. I've largely just sat down and said, okay, let's see what's on the scheduled list or the today list and Todoist and go with that. But I want to be a little bit more intentional about how I am planning my day. I want to plan it around my energy levels. I want to plan it around margin. I want to make sure that I have space in my day, that I'm investing in my whole person and not just pouring into work. Because it's really, really, really easy, especially when you work from home, just to prioritize work all of the time. And so that's kind of a challenge for me. So I want to make some intentional choices around planning my day, building healthy habits. I don't really know how this is going to work trying to do this, but being more mindful of it, I think, is a really good thing. Consistency is also something that I want to build a little bit more into my life. So consistency as far as when am I waking up? When am I going to bed? When am I starting work for the day on the days that I am working? When am I done? What do those days look like? If I can build more consistency in, I think that allows me to be a little bit more effective in the process too. So that's really kind of where I'm at. As I mentioned, I'm trying to build some of this out inside of Obsidian. We looked at that a little bit already, where that's at. And I'm partway there. I mean, it's partway. It's not 100% of the way there. I've got to spend a little bit more time into it. I'm probably going to end the stream a little early today just because it's lunchtime and I'm getting a little hungry. And so you got to take care of those needs too if you're going to get any work done. Anyway, but that's kind of where things are at. I have landed on, we were talking about package 1 and package 2. Package 1 being the multi-tool system. Package 2 being mostly an Obsidian. I've landed on a package 1 approach where, well, it's not really package 1. It's more like package 3. Now for a second here. So Todoist is for tasks. Obsidian for personal notes and high level personal notes and the vision strategy aspect. So again, up here, vision and objectives is really the theme, annual review, and OKRs. I'm planning on using Notion still for content projects. Bullet journal is kind of more an analog scratch pad. Capture. And Sama is one that I am not 100% sure on. And I have a bit of a dilemma here. And here's why. I've primarily used iCloud Calendar for years. And in order for me to use Sansama effectively, I'm going to need to have access to my calendars in either Google Calendar or Outlook because they don't integrate with iCloud at this point in time. I know like Morgan interacts with iCloud, which is great. For example, if you are a Windows user in any capacity, but you use iCloud calendars, Morgan integrates with it. So check it out. I've been using it to manage my calendars on Windows, which is really, really helpful using iCloud because otherwise you have to use Outlook and it's a pain in the neck to do. But it doesn't really have that great of planning capabilities like Sansama does. I could use something like Bento, but the challenge there is it's only on mobile. I like Francesco's app. If you haven't checked it out, do have a look. But it's, I don't know. I really liked Sansama when I trialed it out, but I need to have a Google account to get it going, basically, is kind of where I'm at. This is also why I'm using Todoist for tasks, is because it integrates with Sunsama. I don't need projects to be integrated in there. That's where I can have those stored in Obsidian, those big picture ideas that I'm pursuing. The other thing I'm probably going to do is I'm going to keep a whiteboard over here, or at least have some kind of a dashboard, a visual dashboard where I can see these are my top priority things that I'm working on at this moment in time. And everything else is just extra stuff if I can work on it. So that's really it. I think that's really where I stand as far as productivity systems. I've made some decisions on it in the last week, and I'm just going to keep iterating on it. I know I'm probably not going to get super far on it in the next few days, largely because I'm taking a little bit of a vacation for a while, which will be nice. And I'm not going to get a lot of work done in that time frame. But I will be sorting through some of this probably mentally at some point. But anyway, with that, I just wanted to end the stream today with two things. First, if you're interested in catching that annual review guide again, you can head to thinkeffective.co/annual and get that completely for free. There's a whole checklist and template there that you can use inside of your Obsidian Vault or anywhere else. It's just Markdown for that annual review. Highly recommend implementing some kind of a process like this into your life. Secondly, you can become a channel member here now. You can go to youtube.com/effectiveco/join, and you can become a channel member supporting what we do here at Effective. There's two different levels. There's one that's 99 cents and one that's $3.99, I believe. But any level of support that you have for this would be really helpful. It allows us to continue making thoughtful, helpful resources for you to stay effective and live an impactful life. Or if you want to just do something more one time, find your favorite video on the channel and leave a super thanks. That is a helpful way for us to know too what you found the most helpful, and it allows you to support a little bit more directly what we're doing here. But with that, it's not Thursday, but it has been another Think With Me. Thanks so much for joining me today. This will be up on the channel for a little while. I usually leave the Think With Me published on the channel for about a week, and then I'll put it behind on a playlist if you're interested in catching this after the fact, or if you missed different parts of it. We're also publishing some clips from these live streams on a regular basis as well, so be sure to subscribe if you're not catching that. But again, my name is Justin. Thanks for catching us on this week's episode of Think With Me. I'll talk to you in the next one, but until then, stay effective.